Contrary to Western predictions, after 2 years of war, the Russian economy not only did not collapse, but also stood firm and recorded strong growth. When the Russia-Ukraine conflict broke out, the West rushed to impose sanctions on Russia. There have been around 17,500 sanctions imposed after the conflict broke out. A series of unprecedented sanctions were applied to the Russian financial system. The European Union (EU), UK, US and Canada removed a series of Russian banks from the SWIFT global payment system. Half of the foreign exchange reserves of the Central Bank of Russia abroad, equivalent to about $300 billion, are frozen. The West expects sanctions to cause serious consequences on the Russian economy. Many experts believe that the Russian economy will fall into a serious recession. However, after 2 years of conflict, the Russian economy still stands firm in the face of Western sanctions. The Russian economy has far exceeded expectations, achieving resilient growth and demonstrating resilience. The Russian economy will only decline by 2.1% in 2022. In 2023, the Russian economy will make the world pay attention when it grows by 3.6%, trade is still in surplus, and the budget deficit is within the possible range. Control. Russian President Vladimir Putin once emphasized that it is very important that the growth momentum is achieved based on internal resources. Russia's priority remains increasing the income and quality of life of Russians and the well-being of their families. In its January report, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, significantly raised its growth forecast for the Russian economy in 2024 to 2.6%, higher than the 1.1% level that the organization issued last month. October 2023. This number is also significantly higher than the IMF's forecast for the UK, 0.6%, and the European Union, 0.9%. Solid buffers. The growth rate of the Russian economy last year was 3.6%, exceeding the world average. Meanwhile, the average economic growth rate globally is only 3% and the economic growth rate of developed countries is only 1.5%. Russia's economy has recovered steadily, thanks in part to the country's central bank. Since 2022, they have introduced large interest rate hikes, currently at 16%, to control inflation. This combined with controls imposed by the government makes it almost impossible for Russian exporters and many foreign companies to get money out of the country. By keeping the currency circulating within Russia, these policies have helped the ruble avoid a complete collapse. Mr. Sebastian Hoppe, an expert on Russia at the Free University of Berlin, commented that the industrial production sector is also operating surprisingly stably, especially the automotive sector. Components from China appear more and more after the Europeans withdrew from Russia. Thanks to imports from China, Russia's economy remains stable. Russia is not too affected even though it has to spend significantly on defense to serve the war and cope with a series of unprecedented sanctions from the West. Most of Russia's revenue last year came from oil exports. Huge resources are a solid buffer for the Russian economy. Chris Weaver, an investment advisor who has worked in Russia, said the issue was underestimated when sanctions were introduced. Oil, gas, and commodities such as uranium remain of great importance globally. The US still has to buy uranium in large quantities from Russia. Crude oil, the main source of revenue for the Russian budget, is also affected. In December 2022, G7 banned shipping companies and insurance companies in countries that provide services for Russian oil exports if the selling price exceeds $60 per barrel. A similar ban has been imposed on Russian oil products since February last year. Yet oil sales remain as stable as they were before the conflict, despite EU sanctions. For nearly a year, Russia has still been able to sell oil at close to market prices, thanks to traders actively collecting old ships and a series of new companies entering the market. Russia has been able to send oil to customers such as China, India, and Pakistan without having to comply with price ceilings. Russia's oil revenues also skyrocketed. In 2023, the country will record a record budget revenue, reaching $320 billion. Russia's revenue in 2024 is expected to reach nearly $394 billion. The forecast figure in 2025 is nearly $377 billion and in 2026 is more than $382 billion. The unemployment rate is also currently at a record low of 3.2% in 2023, according to data from the Russian Federal Statistics Service. Sharing with DW, Ms. Alina Rybakova, an economist at the Peterson Institute for International Economics, explained that there are three main reasons why the Russian economy remains strong. First, the country's financial system is sufficiently prepared to cope with sanctions. The second reason is that Russia still has huge revenues from oil and gas exports. Fuel prices skyrocketed after the fighting broke out. Meanwhile, the West is slow to introduce sanctions policies. This means Russian traders, transporters, and oil companies still have many months to prepare. Finally, Western restrictions on exports to Russia are not effective enough. Russia can still buy necessary products through third countries. There are still many holes. Although Russia's 2023 economic indicators are impressive, some problems also appear. First is the severe labor shortage. Due to the impact of many factors such as population decline, mandatory military conscription and brain drain, in 2023 Russia will fall into the most serious labor shortage in recent years. Russia currently lacks human resources in many fields. Unemployment is low, but wages also increased significantly throughout 2023. Mr. Chris Weafer said that rising wages of workers are driving inflation up. The longer it takes Russia to deal with it, the more difficult, costly, and destructive the future problem of the workforce will be to solve. He also commented that pouring money into commodities instead of investing in industries could cause many negative consequences in the long term. Reserves will gradually run out. When the conflict ends, the economy will suffer more damage. Russia will have a headache thinking about what to do next, he told DW. In addition, the ruble depreciated due to the impact of strict financial sanctions imposed by the West. The amount of dollars Russia earns has decreased sharply while demand is still increasing and people are still hoarding dollars. Fluctuations in the foreign exchange market caused the ruble to depreciate sharply. In early October last year, the ruble lost more than 30% of its value against the USD. Ms. Alina Rybakova said Russia has spent large amounts of money on weapons production. However, according to her, this is not good for the economy and is not a highly productive activity in the medium term. Not only that, Russian inflation also increased. In 2023, Russia's inflation rate will be about 7.5%, and the prices of some food and consumer goods will increase by more than 20%. The Central Bank of Russia had to sharply raise the reference interest rate to 16% to cope with soaring prices. Last August, Russian gasoline prices suddenly increased, causing gasoline shortages in some places. After the Russian government restricted the export of petroleum products, the situation improved. Mr. Benjamin Hilgenstock, an expert at the Kiev School of Economics, said that the move to raise interest rates shows that this economy is facing challenges. Although Russia's economy is currently better than forecast, it is still greatly affected by sanctions. The macro environment in Russia has degraded significantly, experts told DW. Western countries have also recently been looking for new ways to reduce Russia's financial power. The U.S. increased sanctions on ships and entities that violated sanctions and participated in transporting Russian oil. The West believes that limiting Russian oil export revenue is important. However, Ms. Alina Rybakova believes that Russia's financial strength is unlikely to decline quickly if oil prices remain above $60 per barrel. Russia has done many things to consolidate its finances and avoid dependence on pressure from the West. Oil prices are still a good foundation for Russia. If oil prices fall to $60 to $70 per barrel, Russia can start first felt the impact, she shared with DW.